Pocket hole screws get a lot of hate in woodworking, and honestly, some of that is well deserved. But they do have their place. So today I want to talk about when pocket holes make sense and when they don't. The pocket hole is an angled step hole designed for a fastener that looks like this. The joint is meant to pull two boards together tightly. But this is a mechanical fastening method, not your typical woodworking joinery. The strength of this joint comes from the screw tension, friction of the two boards, and sometimes glue. Some people even use the pocket joint as a clamp just to hold the glue joint together. And when using a pocket hole screw, you often use a pocket hole jig like this one right here. This is the most simplified version of the Craig jig. And as you can see here, this is the step drill bit that you use to make the hole. This isn't some sort of modern hack, this is just a fastening system. It's important to point out that the pocket holes don't interlock any wood like a traditional woodworking joint might. They just rely on a metal fastener. Pocket hole joinery is pretty fast, it's repeatable, and it's very beginner friendly. When you're using pocket holes, there is a minimal amount of clamps that you need to use. Usually the screw is all you need. And it's really easy to align boards together, especially for things like face frames, because you can just sort of lay them down on a work surface and then screw the pocket holes together. And for the most part, the other side ends up being pretty flush board to board. Mistakes are pretty easy to fix because they're screws. So unless you use a ton of glue, I guess, you can usually just remove the screw, make an adjustment, and put it back together. With pocket hole screws, you can build something pretty functional in an afternoon. They make getting into woodworking a little bit less intimidating. You don't have to learn all that fancy joinery to start building right away. But the accessibility of pocket hole screws is both why they're so popular and why they're so hated. The master woodworker really values joinery that can stand on its own, longevity of their projects without using any metal fasteners, visible craftsmanship. Instead of hiding their joinery, sometimes they like to show off their mortise and tenon joints, their dovetails, their box joints. You get the point. That's just sort of their way of saying, I've been doing this for years, look at how good I am. Pocket hole screws can sometimes be criticized because they can loosen over time. They're screws, so they can either back out or the threads can literally rip out of the wood, especially if you're using something like pine. Pocket hole screws don't resist racking very well. And racking is when you have a butt joint like this and the board that's the vertical board here is allowed to, well, this looks like a fish. What am I doing here? Pocket hole joints don't hold up well to racking, which is sort of a side force on the joint. In some cases, they kind of hide mistakes instead of solving them. From a cultural standpoint, pocket hole screws represent speed, where complex joinery represents mastery. But I mean, ultimately, this isn't really about strength. It's more about philosophy, and pocket holes just don't look that impressive if you're trying to show off to your friends, or in these days on social media. They don't really prove that you have great woodworking skills. They do prove that you're efficient. Pocket hole joints are ideal when the joint is hidden, the loads are vertical, and the joints are supported in other ways in other places. Some excellent uses for pocket holes are cabinet boxes. Many of the joints are actually on the back, up against the wall, and you'll never see them. Perfect. Face frames are also a perfect way to use pocket hole screws because you attach all the pieces together with the pocket holes. The ugly side ends up getting attached to the cabinet box and you'll never see it ever again. Drawer blocks. Drawer boxes are also an ideal situation to use pocket hole screws. You can put them on the very front and on the very back. The back you'll never see because they're on the back, and on the front you end up covering with the face of the drawer. Also, you can use them for aprons. They're also great to use for shop fixtures and jigs because they're fast and nobody really cares whether or not you can see a pocket hole screw. Honestly, most cabinets in your house are probably held together with at least some pocket hole screws. And frankly, if nobody's ever going to see it, why pretend to be fancy? This is just real world woodworking, not museum pieces. Avoid using pocket holes when the joint is structural, there's racking or twisting forces, or the joint is highly visible. Some examples are things that are used a lot or might slide across the floor, like a chair, table legs, bed frames, long unsupported shelves. Basically, think of things that you might be sitting on with a lot of force and wiggling around on, or pushing back and forth across the floor. Things that might cause those joints to sort of loosen up or tear out over time. And that's because screw joints like this don't really like constant movement, and their end grain holding strength is limited. If it can wobble, rock, or rack, don't trust pocket hole screws. This is where that traditional joinery comes in. Dovetails, box joints, mortise and tenons, heck, even dowels with wood glue. Pocket holes are still not a good substitute for good structure. The truth is, pocket holes aren't beginner or advanced. The skill with pocket holes is knowing when to use them and when not to. What makes you a good woodworker is choosing your methods intentionally. Being a gatekeeper and saying what makes a good or bad woodworker just hurts the craft. The specific tools or the joints don't make your projects bad. It's the choices and how you decide to use them that do. Nobody's earning any points in woodworking for suffering. Don't use a dovetail when a pocket joint will do. Especially when you're first starting out in woodworking and you're a beginner, build for function, not pride. Sometimes you want to build for pride, but start with function first. Pocket holes are not bad. Using them in the wrong places is. If you understand the limits of your pocket holes, they can be super useful. If you don't understand the limits, they fail. So build for intention, not approval. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like button. Leave me a comment and tell me how you guys use pocket hole screws, and subscribe to my channel. We'll see you guys.